We are going to be talking about something quite exciting today, kind of getting an insider talk to Pepsi and Co. Just going to give it a few minutes just to let everyone in. So if you're a graphic designer, or also if you just want to know a little bit more about like working abroad, Haley's definitely the person to be listening to about all that today. So yeah, so we're going to give it another like minute, 2 minutes max, and then we will begin. While we're waiting, just really quickly, so we're here with Hayley Shore, but also we are Artbound. We are a career accelerator for creatives. So like our whole premise is we help bridge that gap between, what you learn technically and theoretically in university, and then what you actually need to know soft skill wise and how to, navigate launching your career, how to be a competitive job seeker, and we do get that guaranteed internship placement as well for you. I will go through a little bit about the program about halfway through, just so that way anyone who is interested can know, and then we'll go back to the Q&A. So we'll have time for, a Q&A for your questions to be answered, and to go through a little bit about the program. So with that, Haley, do you want to take a quick moment and
Mhm.
introduce yourself and kind of go through a little bit about your experience? I also have it here up on
Perfect. Oh,
screen.
that's so great. I didn't know there'd be a nice synopsis, just
Yeah.
in case I forget any of my own details. So, hello, everybody. I'm Hayley Shore. As said, I'm a design manager at PepsiCo, currently based in London. But I've had quite a journey within PepsiCo to get to London in the first place. So, kind of to start off, before all of PepsiCo experience that I've had, I did start out in New York City in the agency side of the design world. That was after graduating at FIT in the packaging and branding design program. Um, and so, as I mentioned, first kind of couple years of my career was in agency, working with a huge range of different kind of industries and products, everything from branding tampons, dog food, the really, really fun, beautiful stuff to champagne and beauty products and things. So, again, in the agency world, I got that kind of big scope of challenges really as a junior designer, which kind of helped me shape my portfolio and my resume, which I thought I wanted to go off and just travel the world and be a freelance designer with. But unexpectedly had a job opportunity brought to me from PepsiCo based in New York. At the very first interview, I thought to myself, this isn't me. I don't want to work for a big corporation. Like, I don't want to be tied down in New York City, even though I love New York City, don't get me wrong. But as you can probably imagine, as I'm still at PepsiCo now, I did take that job thinking I would just stick it out for a year, kind of put it down on my list of experiences and maybe continue in my freelance kind of world. But a year in, I found it to be such a different kind of landscape than I expected. It is a massive corporation. It's the number one foods company in the world. Number two in bevs. I bet you can guess who our competitor is, just one ahead of us. But I found it to be such a different environment than I expected. It is very much run like an agency kind of mentality. We're almost a startup, or we were a bit more like a startup at the early days of design within PepsiCo, where we were just pitching how we worked within the business and why design should have a seat at the table. So that was a really exciting opportunity that I kind of didn't expect. It was teams filled with really creative people from different backgrounds. And again, just kind of not what I expected from a big corporation. Um, so I did stay. And about 3 years in, I started thinking to myself, I've gotten kind of the grips of branding and packaging design within what I was doing at the time. I want to try something different. I thought I wanted to go more into the production side of things and do things like all the lovely Pepsi commercials you might see, working kind of the filming, editing, sound design type of side of things. Um, my manager at the time said, just wait, just wait for a second. Like, that's not what I want you to do, but you're not going to find out yet what the opportunity is that I've got in mind for you. And about a month later, they announced that they were moving our global headquarters for beverages to Dublin, Ireland. Now, I'd never been to Ireland in my life, never even really thought about Ireland, to be honest. And of course, that was the opportunity my manager had in mind for me. And pretty much straight away, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. This is crazy, but I'm going to do it. So my probably biggest step in my career was helping to move our global headquarters for design to Ireland. I was the only designer that took the role. So there were loads of marketers, kind of different industries within PepsiCo, all moving from different countries to Dublin. But I was the only person in design. So not only did I have to do my job of branding and packaging and all of that knowledge that I had, but I also had to help design the office, onboard new team members, work with tradespeople in Ireland and figure out how to construct the whole place. I mean, I learned so much in that first year doing that. Um, and just as I was kind of getting comfortable in Dublin, thinking this is now starting to work for me, like got the lay of the land, a little bit of the cultural understanding, and they then offered me a move to London to do something quite similar. So there was already a foods design team in London, but there was no beverage, and they wanted to build that team. So once again, I was relocated and helped to design the office, build our new space, onboard new team members, and kind of build our team in the UK. And that is where I sit now. And I would say that my skill set has very much grown from just being a branding designer to now being sort of a people manager. And I've started new pipelines within the business, such as sustainable merchandise that we create, like all the lovely Pepsi t-shirts and bags and hats and things that you might see. So I now do that for all of our brands, kind of globally. And then now our role in UK has actually expanded to where we're doing a lot of global design for all of our brands around the world. So it's just been a constant sort of change and evolving job role that I've had, which has kind of amounted to almost 10 years now within PepsiCo. And that is where I currently am. So that is my synopsis. But
Yeah. Amazing. And we'll get more into, I think, all those different points. I think what's really good to hear for everyone, like, by the way, I think now more than ever before, careers are kind of flexible, and there's going to be different points in your career that you're going to be doing different things. And that's the beauty of working nowadays as opposed to 10 years ago or even before that, where you were a little bit more pigeonholed. So that's really cool to see. Before we go into the Q&A and before we go into a little bit more of a fireside chat, because I have some questions to kind of get the ball rolling with you, Hayley. I just want to give a quick intro, kind of back up a little bit, just for those who joined a little bit later of who I am. So I'm the head of admissions and head of strategic partnerships at Earthbound. So I work in a blend of helping students come into the program while also helping us collect new company partners. Through this course, I did the program myself. So I did the apprenticeship program in Berlin 8 years ago. I've been living in Berlin ever since. We at Artbound, we focus with aspiring like graphic designers, film producers, artists, fashion designers. We really work with the whole sector of the creative industries, and we've placed over 1,000 interns along the way. So, and we're increasing to place more. So that's just a little bit of like intro on me and kind of my experience. So as we go through some of the things today, I'm going to be making sure to ask the questions that I know are on a lot of your minds and also what I'm hearing from other companies as well. So to kind of break that down, we'll do more of the insider talk. I'll break it into like a little bit more about the program, and then I'll open it for your questions. So if you think of questions along the way, pop them in the chat. We'll address them towards the end. All right, so with that, I'll stop sharing the screen for a second. So I think my first question for you, Hayley, because we have so many people that are just starting, what would you say are some of the things that you're kind of seeing in the industry right now? Like, what are some good things to have and build up in your skills while you're still maybe a student, or if you're new to the industry, what are some things that you like to see?
so, I mean, the industry has changed so much, I mean, I've been in the industry about 12, 13 years now. In the past 3 years, I've seen such a massive shift within AI. And I know we might double click into that at another point. However, I will say first that some of the basic branding and 360, when I say 360 skills, that means like thinking about a brand from all aspects, how it walks, talks, behaves, who you're trying to target. Those things are still kind of the ground basics that I think any branding design job would look for. So I'd say in terms of when you're applying for jobs or trying to figure out what to showcase in your portfolio, I think it's really about showing your kind of travel of thought from the inception of an idea and strategically why you've thought that idea, or maybe a few different ideas, but why you've selected and honed in on one area. And then showing how you build that out, not just in one way, not just the packaging design itself or a store design itself, but kind of the whole 360 of how a brand can live and breathe. And I think the more digital we go, and especially the more AI influences the way that people react to posting, social media. I think brands are living and breathing in such a different way than they used to. They've got so many more legs, as you might call it. They would have a tone of voice within TikTok. They would have a way that they want consumers to interact with the brand. So no longer are we almost just presenting, here's the lovely pack and here's a billboard advertisement. It's like, now here's how we might activate in a brand collaboration. Here's how we might show up in a unexpected clothing store, even though we're a beverage brand. Here's how we kind of should be seen through our consumers' eyes in so many different realms. And I think that as time has gone on and as my career has progressed, I'm just seeing that expand more and more. It's like, how do you look on a t-shirt? What's your color palette when you kind of would design a collection of clothing? Sounds crazy, but I mean, for beverage brands, which is my kind of specialty, like we are hardly even designing the packaging. We're designing everything around it. And so I think that sort of 360 thinking is probably the biggest skill that most companies would look for. And again,
Okay.
the reason why you get there as well is really critical to show is like, why does it speak this way or act this way?
Gotcha. All right. So just to break that down for everyone who's like following along. So what I'm hearing from you and Jen, yes or no on this. So basically you're saying in a portfolio, have the finished product, but then kind of show the mock-ups of it out in the world. So posters, t-shirts, maybe out on like TikTok, Instagram, maybe content. So you're saying it's really good if you're a branding student or graphic design student to kind of flesh out something to its full entirety.
100%. Um,
Awesome.
and even more so, I think lately we've been really trying to ground every decision we make with judgment criteria that we'd call it. So, what
Mhm.
are three judgment criterias for a successful campaign for that product? Like how, again, kind of defining like what those, I don't know, usually three overarching principles for that brand would be, and linking that back to who the consumer is that you're trying to target. I think always having a bit of that strategy at the front is something that we do in every single project we do now for design. Is like, who are we talking to? What do they
Right.
like? And then what are those principles we always want to hit when we're designing for them?
All right, so you just brought up a really good like kind of vocab buzzword to bring up that's going to be in the industry, right? Which is judgment criteria and principles. Can you give maybe just a very like small example of what that means? Because I feel like for some people listening, even my background in graphic design, that might not be a term I'm familiar with, or they might
Sure.
be familiar with. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think again that's something that I've only gotten used to in the past few years. We're just really getting honed in on how we define how we brand our brands.
Okay.
So for example, Pepsi might be unapologetic, bold, and have a wink in the eye is something that we always say. It's got a bit
Mm,
of cheek. In the UK, that would be a word that we use for Pepsi. It's cheeky. So it's always got that little like unexpected quality to it.
mhm.
But we would always kind of tee up anything we've designed to make sure it's hitting those 3 points. Um, so that's kind of what I
Awesome.
mean by judgment criteria.
Yeah, that reminds me of back in my university days in graphic design. And by the way, I do come from a graphic design background, just to plug in there because I realized I didn't say it earlier. It reminds me when we used to have to like make up a fake something, right? Whether it was a tea company or whatever. And we had to like make this whole big long, like 100 words that come to mind and 100 thumbnails. And just remember that that's something that you can include in your portfolio, right? Like that kind of brainstorming, that sketch out is something that you can improve like and work with later on. I would also say really important, keep all your briefs so you can go back and work on different projects and flesh them out at a later date. Keep the original files. But we'll go over maybe a little bit more of like that kind of stuff later too. So I guess maybe one of my questions, and we've been kind of already touching on this, is, what skills or experience do you think are most important for creatives who want to work at companies like Pepsi and Co. or other high caliber companies, whether it be food and bread or branding or agencies or kind of more of these bigger corporate companies as well that are a little bit more global?
Sure. So I would say, especially for brands and in the consumer packaged world, I think human centricity, that's going to be another buzzword I throw out. Really thinking about your consumer is key. And then, again, kind of building that strategy around the human centric kind of behavior a brand should have. Um, I mean, I think it's just expanding on kind of what we were saying is like, why have you made it purple? Like, why is purple relevant? It's kind of deep diving into each of those aspects. I'd say that the types of designers that we always look for are people that do kind of have that expanded thought when they present their work to us. So, for example, one of my favorite hires that I had, I always like to use her as an example because there was this whole wall of portfolios. I mean, massive auditorium of portfolios. And this one designer not only had her poster of all of her work in front of us, but she had built a chair and she had carved the branding into this wooden chair, and it was for Heineken. It was a theoretical kind of brand design, but her whole tagline just said hi. But then she took that train of thought and like literally built something physical out of that. And
Mm.
to me, I was like, if this girl can build a chair and do something unexpected that caught our eye like that, then I mean, she could probably crack anything we throw at her. So, I mean, quite literally that expansion of thought into something physical just really
Mhm.
stood out. And so I think it kind of links into this idea of showing that you've got curiosity, and even if you can't do something perfectly, you're willing to kind of explore that or push something outside of the box. And again, that outside of the box thinking was what really stood out. And her little business cards were all bottle openers branded
Oh,
with the same campaign. So, it was just very thought through. And it
yeah.
kind of touched on experience design, even though she wasn't an experienced designer. She was quite traditionally packaging design. So, again, it was just kind of showing that expansion of thought. And that was why we really gravitated towards her. Um, so I'd say, like, starting out in the industry, it really is kind of, it sounds crazy, but just throwing things at the wall and then not being afraid to kind of show that and back why you thought that. Um,
Mm.
I think another thing that's really important, especially in big companies, is being insights driven. So, another example of a great project we saw in a portfolio, and we ended up hiring this person, was a project for McDonald's, and it was a theoretical campaign, but she used a statistic she'd found that was about, I think, like 56% of UK teens go to McDonald's for a first date or something like that.
Oh,
It was,
wow. Funny,
and
yeah.
it was just something you wouldn't know. But then she
Mhm.
based her whole project around that insight. And that kind of connection between an insight that happens in consumer behavior through
Yeah.
to then her project. Her project wasn't even visually that great, if I'm honest, but it was
Okay.
that thinking and that train of thought that we saw. And we were like, that would really apply in this kind of industry. So I
Yeah.
think using insights is a big tool that I think often you don't think to use in school.
Okay.
But if you can find an insight and ground your work in something like that, it really elevates it.
Yeah, especially because insights like that, I mean, that could be its own commercial, right? Like that could then be
100%.
taken by the marketing team and to made into commercial and to make into these other projects. And I think the thing that I hear over and over and over again by leading AI specialists, because I do a lot of like, dinners about AI and things like that with people in the industry, is the big thing that they say is like AI can regurgitate stuff, but it's not going to be able to come up with a new story. Like it
100%.
can kind of make something you've seen before, or like a big thing that's going to come into play soon is storytelling and how to be a more interesting storyteller, something that's going to be important. We've talked kind of about the bigger picture stuff, but I'm curious, what are some of the things that if you're looking at two portfolios and you're breaking it down to the technical, right? You're breaking it down to like the things that they learned in school. What are like two or three things that make a portfolio seem more professional, seem more commercially relevant? Maybe example of like three types of projects and then three types of technical things like typography, et cetera, would be awesome to hear.
Mm, sure. I mean, I would say within each project having some continuity. So even though your packaging design or your product that you're displaying might have a sense of design to it, kind of using that same design and expanding the world of that design so that every single page for that project has the same background and border and details on the edges of the pages, and the typeface on the bottom, even if it's just your numbers of the pages, kind of matches to that project. I feel like that kind of continuity is something that really elevates kind of a portfolio look and feel.
Okay, so for
I mean,
print portfolios. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. A
Okay.
lot of the portfolios we see here in the UK tend to be print. I mean, digitally as well. I think even just if you are kind of designing a online platform for your space, like having that whole project sit within a branded space and not just on a white background, sometimes really elevates.
Mhm.
So again, it's kind of pushing your one thing into a whole world that you might step into. Uh,
Yeah.
that always helps it feel quite considered. So that would be one thing. I mean, I it's a funny thing to say, but I feel like I hire a little bit less for like the detail skills when I'm looking at portfolios. Of course,
Mhm.
things need to be crafted and considered, but I do think that personally I tend to look for the strategic thinking and the storytelling, as you said before, more than everything else. So even in that sense, I think framing each project in a way of, here is the first insight, or here is my first statement that sparked
Mhm.
the thought for this project. And then the next page being, here's what that thought led to. And here's the consumer that we're targeting. Kind of like staging everything in that way, where you step through the
Okay.
thought process, really helps,
Mhm.
as opposed to just jumping straight into the visuals. So that's
Mm.
another thing that I'd say we look for is a little bit of that framing at the start
Yeah.
and end of a project, almost having like a thought, a prompt, and then a conclusion,
Mhm.
as you would write an essay almost. And then in the middle, you've got all your beautiful stuff. I
Does
don't
it help to
know.
add the briefs? Like, because I'm thinking about, portfolios that I've even seen from students,
Mhm.
and, you're kind of going through the project and they're showing the thumbnails and they're showing all this, but then they don't have the briefs. Do you think it helps you when they have the brief kind of as a tagline somewhere?
Definitely. And I think that a brief can always be distilled into a statement, and
Mhm.
maybe that single statement, it can be enough. So it could be um, almost a prompt that you would ask yourself: how do we bring fizz into a world of boredom? Like distill, I don't know,
Right.
that's a weird prompt, but I think we wrote something like that for a project recently. But it's kind of distilling the brief into a single statement that you're trying to answer the question to, and then
Mhm.
going into the project. That definitely helps. We even write a lot of our internal presentations in that way, where we reframe what the ask was from our marketing teams. We put a big statement on that first page to remind them what they've asked us to do. And then
Mhm.
we kind of go into our strategy.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then I'm also going to add two things here as well, because I think it's really important. I think one of the best things that you can do if you're currently in school is really master typography. Like get experimental, play with things, because if you go in and you have like avian your necks and everything that you do, like that's often a common mistake I see from students, and who I see maybe students with amazing illustration skills or really strategic thinking, having that continuity. But then their typography is maybe like the 12 first ones that come up. And so I really would recommend, as a student, um, play, experiment, break out of the mold of typography, and, follow typographers on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Pinterest, who are pairing types together really on LinkedIn. I find so much stuff on LinkedIn, and my flatmate went back to school for graphic design, and I am sending them posts from LinkedIn all the time of being like, here's a quick trip, like tip, and here's something that you can do. So that's one thing I wanted to pop in
I
there.
I think that's a great addition to kind of note on, because I also think the current trend of typography, and this will always evolve and change, but right now typography is very much almost very personal and a
Mhm.
lot more hand done. You'll see big brands starting to break out of the mold and do things that aren't so structured and literal, and be a little bit more expressive with type. So I think that's a really good shout, especially right now in the landscape of design. I think type has gone a lot more expressive than and human and organic than it ever used to be. So yeah, definitely a good addition to think about.
Yeah. And also just know when you're making a website portfolio, a lot of the times, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like recruiters, for all our head recruiters, they're only going to look at the first page of your website for 7 seconds. Like most recruiters spend maybe a minute on portfolio websites. So make sure that when you are putting things on your website, that the first page has the imagery of the finished products, and then people can tap into that and see all the background. So I did want to add that too for people who are a little bit like, how do I structure this?
Mhm.
That's really important. All right, last question before I dive into the program. We open it up for the Q&A. What's some of the like best projects you've worked on, or what are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on recently?
Great question. We have been actually restructured recently in the way PepsiCo is working. And we've gone from a very regionally focused model where each region works on regional projects. So the UK be working for, all the UK, Latin America working just for Latin American countries. But now we're almost sharing the work, and each region is focusing on a main objective within PepsiCo. And our team is focused on flavor innovation, and which is really exciting because brands are starting to do all sorts of things. I mean, I don't know if people have seen the whole trend of prebiotic. I've actually got one next to me. This is our newest acquisition, but Poppy. And we're just starting to really push the boundaries within flavor design. And I don't know if anyone's seen the new Pepsi treats. If you're in the US, there's one version of it in the US. We've relaunched that in the UK, and that's now going global. But basically, it's all about tapping into indulgence moments. So, like dessert
Mm.
moments, your little treat at night, or your little 3 p.m. Pick me up. And we've made a product that really tries to target that moment and offer it with zero sugar. This sounds like an ad. Um, but even through to the visual design, it's allowed us to push the world of Pepsi into a space that is so unexpected. So, we've all been black and blue, our kind of classic Pepsi colors, and now the whole treats world is pink and almost Y2K
Mm.
influence and chrome details. And that project has just been so much fun because it's pushed us completely out of our comfort zones into this whole world that we never thought would be possible. I mean, everything in the office looked pink for a while. And it's a
Bad thing.
true 360 kind of branding example, I would say, because we did this collaboration with this kind of experiential space in London and took over the whole space. There were digital screens all in the ceilings. There were vending machines like to grab the products. We made little plushy, like jelly cat-esque Pepsi cans, treat cans that came out. A cocktail bar that was making like treats, ice cream floats. And the whole space just was insane and was a huge success. And if you Google it or LinkedIn it, there was loads of posts on LinkedIn for it. But that project just really kind of pushed us again out of our comfort zone. But we got to do some really cool, kind of like young, fun graphics and built a really cool world for it that's just expanded. And like I said, it was launched for the UK, and then now we're building it for all of the global markets. So now we're seeing it pop up in China. Korea is about to launch. And it's just really exciting to see how all these markets take that language and then really play with it and create whole worlds of like treats. So yeah, that would be one of my favorites.
Yeah. I think a big thing that I'm hearing from you over and over and over again in this call, especially in the food and beverage world and especially in like the branding world, is you want to make a world
Yeah.
with each product and you want to make it people feel like they're tapping into something that's bigger than themselves. So I wanted to highlight that, but it sounds really cool. Sounds like you get to work a lot with the event management team, marketing team. All right, so Haley, I'm going to quickly pause us. I'm going to go through the program. This is going to take about 50 minutes, and then I'm going to open it for Q&A. So please have your questions ready. You can start putting them already in the chat. Not yet. Questions will be in 15 minutes. So I see a raised hand already. Type it in the chat and I will address the questions as we get to the Q&A portion. But for right now, let me dive into a little bit more about Outbound. So, like I said earlier, we at Outbound Initiative are a global career accelerator. Okay. So, very much like what you're hearing today in today's conversation is aspects of what we do and we go over in our program. So, we place in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, Austin, London, Berlin, Melbourne, Sydney, and we have a really robust virtual program which can be done from anywhere. The cool part about graphic design is you can pretty much go everywhere with our program, and if you want to stay home, we also have that robust virtual program as well. We do have London, which is really cool. And then we place current students and recent graduates. So we do work with both. We don't really have a limit for how many years after you graduate, but I would recommend doing our program within 3 years of graduation. Some visas have a 1 to 2 year limit. In terms of internships we have like design, entertainment, media, marketing and ad, fine arts, and fashion. So for graphic designers, really looking at graphic, branding, art direction, layout, design, motion, UI, UX, web, content creation. But I would also say really great backups to have and things to consider is campaign strategy, project management, and social media management to really help boost up those soft skills. We also have graphic design for fine art spaces, which is what I did, which is a nice hybrid between like the art industry and the design industry. So some other things to consider. In terms of the program itself, we break it down into our academy. So we do a full coaching curriculum, which you do get a certificate for, a guaranteed internship placement. You get 2 resume boosters with us. The Artbound Initiative Network, which is global. We have participants from literally all around the world in every time zone, and continued and dedicated support. So what this looks like is we first do the academy where we do module one, which is a profile revamp. This means we're redoing your resume, portfolio, interview preparation with an alchemy of seeing recruiters, resume writers, and industry experts. We then, after revamping your material, we'll do a deep dive in module two into do's and don'ts, unwritten rules, what to actually expect, online presence, self-promotion, how to curate your elevator pitch, how to build a network from scratch, and so much more, really helping you understand those like practical soft skills needed and how recruitment works, how to be a job seeker after you leave us. This is all broken down into group sessions, but also video tutorials, prep materials, case studies. And again, we have participants from all over the world. So we put this into a way that can be done from any time zone, any school schedule. It's broken down into bite-sized chunks, and it goes from your point of acceptance until you start your internship. This is what the online portal looks like. So it's really easy to follow. In terms of our amazing industry experts, we have people from Warner Bros., Paramount, Omnicom, Ralph Lauren, Pepsi and Co., Shutterstock, Aquin, and many others. This is just a snapshot of some of our amazing coaches. And our guaranteed internships are ranging from 3 to 6 months. They can be part-time, they can be full-time, they can be for academic credit or experience. We like to be very upfront. We're looking at internships globally. I'll be honest, I've watched the global trend in the last 3 years shift to unpaid predominantly. So just be prepared for that. We can't guarantee that the internship will be paid, but we're going to be pit bulls for you. So after module one, we will handle all the admin for placing you. We will set you up with interviews and get you offers. We're going to go for bat for you with handling all the follow-ups and sending your profile to hundreds of companies. Because we have over 300 partner companies. We actually have closer to 600 partner companies. So we're really going to be going to bat for you and getting you a secured internship. That's guaranteed with the program. And we work with companies like Reflex Group, which is a creative agency in New York, David and Goliath, which is an advertising agency in LA, Pinpoint Collective, Research and Strategy Studio, and Friends, which is content production and agency. Like, so creative agencies, advertising agencies, graphic design studios, gallery spaces, residency spaces, and so much more. In terms of the internships themselves, if you are relocating for them, we'll help you with all the travel support, whether you're changing cities or going abroad. So if you are going abroad, that's visa processing, insurance arrangements, housing arrangements, pre-trip information, in-city orientation, on-site support, and more. We give you continued support, okay, throughout this whole program. You will have a team of coordinators helping you through each phase of the program. You'll have a team of coordinators helping you through the travel and placement. And while you are interning, you will also get continued support. In terms of the timeline, we need applications 4 to 6 months prior to your intended start date. And as the internships range from 3 to 6 months, the average participant is with us for 9 months of continued and dedicated support. Now, with us, just to back up a little bit, housing is optional. You don't have to house through us. We keep it a la carte. Same thing with the visa, because not everyone needs it. But we made sure to have a safe and vetted housing option in every city for those who need it. In terms of the network, I have to say this is probably one of my favorite parts of the program now that I'm 8 years out of interning myself with ABI. We have over 1,000 alum globally. We have online and monthly meetups in all of our cities around the world. We have access to exclusive job boards on our app, which downloads right to your phone. So you get lifelong access to our meetups in our app, where we also have workshops, industry talks, career tips, topics information you can follow at forums. Um, I personally say that this has been one of the things that have struck with me the most because, like, in this year, 8 years ago, the people that I met, I'm working on an art project with someone in South Korea. I just started an artist residency in Sao Paulo in Brazil that will be starting in 2027 with someone I met when I did the program. I just finished an art publication with a collective in New York from people I met when I did the program 8 years ago. So it allows for you to build a long-term success with like-minded people, which is awesome. And then we have alumni who are now all over. They're currently at places like Apple and CBS and Saatchi, NBC, Netflix, Google, TikTok, L'Oreal. So a lot of people have used this to really launch their career. And about 60% of all alum are getting asked to stay on post-internship. So about 60% of our alum are getting hired by the internship that they were placed with. I was one of them. We do have a tuition for our program. We have the local, which is 2,250, so around the cost of a class at uni. Again, you're with us for like 9 months of continued support, right? 7 to 9 months of continued support. If you're going abroad with us, I would budget like a study abroad. It's around 3,250 USD plus visa and housing if needed. And we do, like, this includes everything that I just went over. Not to fret, we have grants, we have scholarships, we have our Art Initiative grant, which covers up to the full tuition off the local programs. Plus, we have additional grants, additional scholarships outlined. We work with a lot of universities. Most universities have stipends or grants for unpaid internships that you can utilize while interning. So we did try to make this as low cost as possible while still making sure that our team is fed and the lights stay on, etc. So actually, the program is cheaper now than when I did it 8 years ago, believe it or not, because we've lowered costs as much as possible. We have a big deadline coming up, so applications for summer, our final deadline for our local program for summer is due February 10th. That is our final deadline for summer. It's coming up in a few days. In our application, it's really easy to find on our website. It's on the top right-hand corner. It says apply. We need resume for design portfolio, the contact info for two references, and if you're applying for a grant, our grant information, and you can start your application there. You can also read more about our grants and scholarships under the How It Works and more about our upcoming events like the one we're doing today. We also have some really cool ones with Paramount Momentum coming up soon as well. So those are some interesting things to note. And then I will leave this QR code up. I saw that we just got a lot of questions in, so I'm gonna start tackling the questions. Haley, are you ready for some great questions?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. First question, this is from Charlie. So, which digital and social platforms have delivered the strongest engagement and reach in your marketing campaigns? And how do you tailor creative acts like creative across them?
Yeah. Easy answer for which is the most successful. It's TikTok. I think that has been kind of across the board. I actually would say, from our team's point of view, we probably focus the least on the TikTok aspect because that's usually handled with an external agency kind of supporting us. However, for each project we do deliver what we would call a digital playbook. And so, what we normally do for that is create assets that can expand across all of the social platforms. And we would create guiding principles and maybe some ideas for how it could plug into things like TikTok, which again is generated by an additional agency to support that, to create, I don't know, like for the treats world, a big pink drip that's activated with your face on Snapchat, or they would work on those back end tools. But what we would deliver our side is, again, a set of usually like 6 different assets that
Mhm.
move in different ways. So we might have a spinning logo and then a typographic piece that bubbles and does something interesting. Then we would have a few moments of our products and how they might move. And then deliver that in what I mentioned, a playbook, where it kind of gives you guiding principles so that as PepsiCo, we would pass that on to all of our customers. So it could be Asda and Tesco or different supermarkets that would use our toolkit, and they might play those different assets in their own way in store or on their own social channels. So we kind of give an overarching um, playbook to then expand by many different partners. And again, I think the crux of it is like having guiding principles of like the type should move like this, or the product should always be central. And we usually have principles as well, like the brand needs to appear in the first 3 seconds of anything. So we usually create that kind of overarching toolkit, and then that gets expanded. But yeah, TikTok is by far the biggest thing. Digital screens as well is huge for consumer packaged goods, because a lot of our stuff will get activated on screens in shopping malls or on a moving billboard. Um, yeah, not sure if that answers everything, but
No, I think that actually answered two of the questions we had because one of them was also like what social media platforms have been the most effective with campaign for each product and promotion. So I think that gives like a nice good insight. Yeah, TikTok and Instagram are definitely some of the biggest, I would say. I think something that's really important to take away from this when you're making portfolios, show what it might look like on TikTok. Give an example of content.
mm,
Mock-ups, by the way, so if you're in university, almost every university design program has mock-ups that are for free. So if you are currently a university student, you're like, oh, I've never used a mockup, I don't have access to mockup, ask your professors and then see what's available through your school for mockups. If not, there are websites that do allow free mockups from university, and now the Adobe Suite actually do have mockups available that you can tap into, and so does Canva. So I would say, like, if you're struggling, because I know this was a question somewhere in there, there was a question about mockups. Places
Mhm.
to look for mockups would be in Canva, would be in the Adobe Suite, and then also just searching, free mockups to download or, checking in with your school. Has there been any places that you've successfully found mockups or any like websites people should know for mockups?
I mean, this might be a cheeky answer, but I think that one thing we didn't touch on that's quite interesting is the use of AI and
Mm,
how we've been using that. And I think, especially for portfolios, it could be a really great tool because AI only gets you. I think there was an article that said 80% of the way. Like it
yeah,
is never going to be perfect.
no,
And so we are never using AI, by the way, in our company to create the finished product. But for a portfolio, you don't need it to be print ready and perfect. And so we're actually using it mostly for the concept phase and for expanding our idea into that like 360 world that I keep talking about. So I've been using Gemini probably the most to kind of, I will sketch something even on a piece of paper and chuck it into Gemini and say, can you make this an actual bag? Or could you make this visual real? And it takes a lot of prompting and a lot of practice, but you can actually get a lot of your visuals created through AI quite quickly these days. Or I'll even screen grab something off Pinterest or Google, even like a Google image of
right.
floating cans, and say, can you take this graphic and apply it to this visual? And that can be done really quickly through AI. Often I'll have a couple different AI tools up at once and I'll do a bit of a competition to see which one achieves my image
Mm,
the best. But you can comp stuff and visualize things quite quickly in that way. Um,
yeah.
and then you can take that and then Photoshop it a little bit. That's often what my process is screen, like get my references, get my sketches done, chuck it into AI, use that as my start point, and then Photoshop it to finish it off. Um,
Mm,
so that's been my latest kind of quick hack if I need to put something really beautiful in a deck that's just not finished.
right.
And it can get to quite a nice quality pretty quickly.
Yeah. Are there, so with that, I would
Mm,
say something to consider as students is like be very careful with concepting through AI when you're not there yet with the designs. Like there is that play. You don't want AI to be creating the idea for you. But one thing that I have seen a student of mine do was they use AI to learn how to do certain design techniques. So they
mm,
would put something in AI and be like, break this down for me. How did this person make this? Or can you point me to YouTube tutorials that explain
yeah.
this? It takes some prompting. I would definitely say like YouTube has so many free resources on how to do latest design trends, gradients, bubbles, etc. So really play with that. There's a question that was, what was in your portfolio? What was your portfolio like? I want to switch this a little bit because I can tell, I know from mine as well, 10-year ago portfolios had a much different breakdown of what was needed. So I want to ask if you were to redo your portfolio today,
Mm.
what would be the type of pieces you would have in it? Give me like 10 pieces that you would make sure were in your portfolio, whether it's products or design types, etc. What would be like maybe 5 or 10 pieces that you would make sure were in your portfolio today?
That's a tough one. I would say I probably wouldn't have 10 projects.
Okay.
I think I would keep it down to 5.
Okay.
Again, in this whole storytelling and world building kind of way, I would say I would expand on a few rather than show loads,
Okay.
and make sure that they each kind of had everything fleshed out from the like absolute very start idea
Hmm.
to kind of the finished product. Um, it's a great tough question because I have not had to build a portfolio in quite a while. And you're very right that mine was very different at the start. I actually built mine from wood and stained my wood, built it with materials. I actually don't know if I'd be opposed to rebuilding it in out of physical materials because I've gone very material based. I've got a bit more of like a fashion and merchandise background
Right.
now. Um, but I would say if you're digital focused, and that's the space that you want to play in, build it digitally and build in aspects like animation and, have something interesting that like draws people in digitally.
Yeah.
Or if you're like myself and I want to go down that more tactical or tangible sort of realm, I would want to use materials and kind of build it out in a physical space. Um, so again, I feel like that's the thing I keep harping back to is like,
Yeah.
adding something unexpected into the portfolio is always a good idea, whether that's
Yeah.
something digitally or if that's something physically. Um,
Mhm. I would say some things that I would make sure in your portfolio when you're applying, especially to programs like mine or if you're a junior, having a diverse set of like a combination of print and digital stuff that you've done. So
mhm.
for instance, like if you do an ad campaign, make sure to show it as a billboard, as a flyer, as a poster, as an Instagram post. I think one thing that people underdo. Like I see a 50-50 split from universities where I see some universities that have more of what we were taught, which is more for print, which is like menus and posters and books and catalogs. Having those pieces incorporated is good, but so much is digital now that making sure that if you do a poster, having what it would look like on an iPad or having what it looked like on an Instagram post is going to be really important. And if you do find your professors are giving you more things that are like for print necessarily, make sure to add in that mock-up section some more digital items.
I
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw a question pop in and it relates back to another thing that I'd like to say on portfolio pieces. I do think within a portfolio, if there's an opportunity to add in something about a brand partnership,
Mm,
um, that's a really big one. I think more and more brands are doing things with other brands than they ever used to. So, like I mentioned before, like beverage brands will now be doing like rings and jewelry. So, finding an interesting angle to say, we think Gatorade should pair with Lululemon, throwing something out there.
yeah.
And then showing what that could look like if you collaborated with another brand and like what a Lululemon event could be that's sponsored by Gatorade. Like throwing something in there that shows how two brands come in together, I think is a really strong piece to add in because that is something that I do look for in portfolios. When I'm, scanning loads and loads, I'm like, oh, a brand partnership just takes a lot of extra thought, I think,
Mhm.
because you're bringing two different worlds together into one, which shows a lot of, branding skill, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
I'd add that.
I was gonna ask another question. I didn't see this one, but I think it's a really important question to ask. For students coming out of university, or that it might be in high school, or haven't gotten that first graphic design experience yet on their resume, what are some maybe traditional and non-traditional experiences that you like to see on a resume for a junior designer?
Mm. It's a good question. I do remember back in the day, and I think this would still apply. I actually threw in a lot of my extracurriculars into my
Mhm.
resume.
Okay.
So I coach figure skating, for example. And even though that's not totally related to design, I felt that building an ice rink was actually a big skill that I had because that was something I've done in my past. And like,
Yeah.
even though that's not a design job that I had, it was a job that helped me kind of curate certain skills or build a skill set that might be helpful within a team dynamic. So I think even in interviewing and talking through your past experiences in that way can be helpful. Um,
Okay.
if you don't have loads and loads of experience to kind of talk to on paper. Um, yeah, that's a rogue one, but
Yeah. What do you say also, like, if you were looking at someone's resume, right, and you had like, let's say people with more like retail or hospitality, or are there certain jobs that stand out to you because they show the soft skills for design? And if so, what would those be?
potentially. I mean, I think working in a retail environment especially can really help with like understanding human behavior
Hmm.
and knowing how a space is merchandised. I mean, quite literally, a retail space has a lot of design thought that goes into it. And even just working in that environment, you see how consumers behave. So, understanding that can translate into design knowledge in a
Mhm.
way. I also remember talking a lot about travel in my initial kind of interviews for design, like my very first jobs, because I was like, I have an innate interest in humans around the world and understanding culture. So my travel experience really helps me foster my design skills
Yeah.
and, design in a global kind of way. So that was something
Yeah.
I remember talking about a lot and trying to like show them that I had the skills without actually having practice them in a, real world setting yet.
Yeah, no, I think one of my most impactful experiences in the graphic design world, and that really shaped my view of graphic design, is I've lived with graphic designers from every continent. And having someone, let's say, from Lagos and how they're going to design versus someone from Germany and how they're going to design, or someone from like Korea. Like I've been able to see these kind of different intricacies of design and what speaks to those people, and that can really inform based off if you're doing global projects or local and bring something new to the mix. I would say some things that are really good to look out for if you're in high school or university. Definitely joining a graphic design club on campus. Um, being a freelance graphic designer. I think volunteering as a graphic designer, like if you're a part of a local community center, whether it's, I don't know, like a horse rescue and they need posters for a fundraiser or your local like community centers, etc. That was something I did that allowed me to put graphic design on my resume before ever leaving my university, ever leaving my high school even. I would say like apply for whatever awards you can. You know, if there's like design competitions, do them. The worst comes to worst is you don't get it. Best comes to best, you do get it. I would also say, like, I got a graphic design award for Key Club when I was in high school, which is like a volunteer club, you know? I got a graphic design award for Girl Scouts and like a graphic design badge, and those things helped. I would also say if you have the opportunity to work, restaurants is really good because of dealing with people, but also any like print stores or copy stores or even Staples or like Apple because you're working them with the technology that you might actually use in the field. So that's a big
Mhm.
one that I always like to mention.
It's funny you mentioned that because one of my first jobs was at a sushi restaurant and I convinced them to let me redesign their menu. And I was like year 2 of university and I was like, how am I doing this? Like, but I did actually, I was able to take that menu design and then apply it to my portfolio as well, as you mentioned. Um,
Yeah.
so you can make an opportunity.
Yes, I think that's a big thing I think both of us can agree on. If you're wanting to travel and you want to be global, you need to be able to advocate for yourself. And it sounds scary, I feel like, to a lot of people, but really just asking the question or just saying to someone, yeah, I have an interest in graphic design. It plants a seed and allows people to be like, oh, well, we need this done. Do you want to do it? Or even just being like, hey, like, if you ever need the menu redone, can I jump in on it? And know that, of those like 100 questions of people, maybe 30% will say yes, but that's still 30% that have, right? So that's the biggest thing is if you don't ask for something, you won't get it. And that's what I've seen again and again. That's how I was able to like go to school abroad. That's how I was able to graduate high school at 16 was purely because I asked. Like those type of things can really allow you to get far. And I wouldn't have been a senior in a company by 25 if I didn't ask or didn't try to put myself in new situations. That's a big one. We had a question about career switching. So someone was wondering for transitioning careers, their portfolio of actual projects is quite scattered across different branding, UI, UX, motion, print. Would you recommend that they do more speculative projects in just one field or to keep it more general and to have those different projects? And if so, should they keep the projects from previous career, even if it's not related?
Hmm. I think it would be kind of targeting, who you're applying with or what you're applying for, and then almost tailoring your portfolio selection to that.
Mhm.
So you might not want to show everything to a company. Again, I'll just use myself as an example. Like if you're going for PepsiCo, like maybe you've got 3 projects in there that really apply to what you think PepsiCo might be looking for, and then expand on those a little bit. And then
Yeah.
you might have a couple supporting projects in there to be like, by the way, this is my background. This is who I
Yeah.
am. Have a project that allows you to talk about your past experience in a good way.
Mhm.
I think that's always healthy. And it's a good way to, it's a conversation starter. But yeah, I would say tailoring it per interview or who you're trying to apply to would be helpful, probably.
Yeah. All right, so I know we have 5 minutes kind of left on the clock. I did want to just see, in terms of questions, I know we had a lot of really, really great ones. How do you foster risk taking as a designer? Like, how in your own practice can you foster that and do that? Because I know that can be daunting for a lot of people.
It's extremely daunting. Um, there's one kind of experience that I had. I mean, the whole experience of moving to Dublin was like the most terrifying that I have ever gone through. And one piece of advice I always give people off the back of my experience doing that was I had to really just like kind of break down my wall and lose the fear to kind of approach very senior people in PepsiCo who were not in design because there were no other design people there, and ask them questions and ask them from their point of view, like what was their objective for me, or how could I help them?
Mm,
Kind of just breaking down that wall and not being afraid to go to the VP of global Pepsi in marketing and just say, I don't really know what my objective should look like this year because there was no one there to shape it. But like, could we have a human conversation about it? Like, what are your objectives this year and how can I help you? So doing that along my career path really helped. And not being afraid to also just find people who people are always willing to kind of help if you show ambition and the initiative and your curiosity and the willingness to try to make something really work.
yeah.
So I'd say like always finding your buddy along the way as well, and finding like mentors has
Mhm.
been my biggest way to kind of like take risks without feeling like I was going to completely flop. Um, and then I guess, I mean, I'm the kind of person that obviously does take a lot a lot of risks, like moving to a new country, but um, I don't know, along the way, kind of finding ways to like help myself. So training myself to speak publicly was a big thing that felt like a risky kind of shift for my career. But I started doing monologues and memorizing them in my spare time and like practicing filming myself talking to kind of get comfortable. So along the way, like taking risks, but then also backing that with like the self work, I guess, to make sure I wasn't going to flail in front of other people. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, being able to speak for yourself and about yourself is definitely a big one. I would say
mm,
also a really good thing if you're having conversations with like adultier adults about what you want to do with your career. If your answer is I don't know, my best recommendation would be to research some different positions and the different things you're interested in, because it's okay to have multiple interests and multiple goals, and then framing, a sentence around like, I'm really interested in graphic design and I want to see what careers are available to me. Something that's already speaking out to me is branding, and I want to explore more in that. And then also turning that to people and asking like what roles are out there. I think that's a big, I always love to mention that because I think that's a big thing people get stuck on is like, I don't want to lie, but I don't know what I want to do. And having some sort of framework is always good. All right, everyone. Well, it was such a pleasure speaking with all of you today. Thank you so much, Haley, if you wouldn't mind staying on for a second. But I want to wish everyone a great rest of your day. If you are applying for the program, please do so by the 10th. And for your resumes and portfolios to our program, as we are going to narrow it down with you, put everything. Don't narrow it down yourself, just put everything, and we'll help you narrow that down together. All right. Well, with that, then, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
thank you guys.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.